Now, prior to joining Rainbow, you've had a pretty successful career through the 70s with Fandango, 4 albums recorded, a lot of live experience opening for some of the biggest acts of the era, the Allman Brothers, Billy Joel, Chicago, and that's to name just a few. Then they fold, and out of the blue, you sat at home one day and you get a call from Rainbow. Now, what did you know about Rainbow before that? Because they weren't actually a big band in the US at that time, were they?
No, no. I first of all, when I growing up, I was playing. I'm still playing guitar, and Blackmore was my absolute number one guitar hero. I mean, absolute. So I would practice all his licks and listen to Deep Purple and so on and so forth. So I knew about Deep Purple, and the only thing I knew about Rainbow really was about Ronnie James Dio, because in New York State, which is not so far from where I lived in New Jersey, we would pretty much play similar circuit clubs there and halls and things. And he was in a band called Elf. And so I knew of Elf, and I knew of the Rockets, and the circuit, so to speak, tri-state circuit, New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. And so I knew of that. And then I knew that he was singing for Ritchie Blackmore's new project, Rainbow. But I really didn't follow it as much because at that point in time, I was deeply into different kinds of music. With Fandango, we were we were always labeled like a country band for some reason, and we toured with what I call the cowboy hats: Wet Willie, Charlie Daniels, the Outlaws, as you said, the Allmans, all this. But we weren't really. I mean, there was a touch of it. The Eagles' five-part harmonies. We had five singers in the band, and including the drummer, and we all added to the harmonies. So we were a very melodic band like that. But I was playing some jazz, and I was playing, I was learning a little bit of pedal steel guitar, banjo. So I was experimenting with different kinds of music. So I really didn't follow Rainbow, quote unquote, that much. I knew of them, but I was not proficient in what they were
What do
doing.
you remember about the day that you get the call and you go to the audition?
Well, I remember, like, again, it was yesterday. I was living in downtown, in the Village in New York on the East Side, and in a one-room flat, studio they call it, and a mattress on the floor. Fandango had just broken up, so needed a gig desperately. And I've told this story before, but it never gets old. Um, just when you're running out of everything, money, etc., you get this phone call, and it was like there was this American guy named Barry Ambrosio from Long Island. He said, I didn't know him, but he knew me, and he was saying that he was sitting next to Ritchie Blackmore, and I figured this is one of my friends really having me on, pulling my leg. Really, I did. I mean, I was cursing a bit at him and stuff and saying, come on, man. He goes, no, seriously. I said, well, then put him on, you know, very arrogantly. And he did pass the phone to him. And I heard, hello, mate. And I was like, yeah. And which one is this? Who are you? Which one of my friends is this, disguising his voice? He said, no, no, this is really Richie. And I said, really? I still didn't believe him. Anyway, he got to the point where he says, I like your voice and all this. And we started talking. He said, are you familiar with Rainbow? And I said, a little. I said, I'm deeply familiar with Purple because, I said they were my favorite band. And I'm playing along and I'm still suspicious. So he said, well, I'm going to put you on to our road manager, Colin Hart, because we want you to come to the studio here in Long Island and and audition. So I said, what the hell? I'm auditioning all around New York City. I might as well check it out and see if this is real. Still being suspicious. So Colin got on the phone and gave me directions, get on a train, and then pick me up, and so on and so forth. And I walked into the studio, and there he was, sitting at the desk was Blackmore and Glover. And and that was that was a knockout right there.
So then you're in the studio, you get into the booth, you take up the mic. Were there any nerves, or was it just adrenaline that was pumping?
Well, we talked for no more than 10 minutes with just small talk and things like that. And then they said, "Well, get in there, in the and sing." So I said, "All right, what do So I got on the mic and I said, "So what do you want me to sing?" So they said, "You improvise, right?" And I said, "Of course." And I had with me uh, my bag. Like I always carried a travel bag with you name it. But inside the bag was stacks of lyrics because whenever I would get an idea, I would kind of jot it down. Um, so they started throwing these just instrumental tracks at me, and I started to pull out different lyrics because I like the lyrics to kind of fit the music. I think the Beatles had a unique ability to do that. First, you hear what it sounds like, and then you say, "Well, this is certainly not a happy song, or this is not a such and
Mm.
such, and all that." So I started to fit some lyrics with the tracks, and they kept changing tracks, and I kept changing lyrics, and pretty soon they brought out this song called "I Surrender," and there was Graham Bonnet's voice on it and his backing vocals and all that. So they said, "Can you sing that?" And I said, "Well, yeah, give me a couple of minutes to learn it, but can I change things?" Because I immediately heard things that should be changed within the structure of melody and so on and phrasing to make this thing a bit more smooth. And so I did. And that's when I saw them nodding to each other. And Ritchie came in with a couple of beers and said, "You want the job?" And I said, "Yeah, I need the job," which I did. And he said, "Well, you got the job." So I said, "Okay, great." And it was all so fast. I had no idea really. It was overwhelming. So I said, "All right, so I'll get back on the train and I'll, you know, get some clothes. I'll go back to the city, get some clothes and come back out." And he said, "No, no, no, you're not leaving." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He says, "No, you're staying here. We're going to put you in a hotel. Anything you need, we'll buy you some t-shirts and jeans, whatever. You'll go to the department store with Colin, and you're going to start writing with Roger tonight." And that was it. And we started writing that very night in the
The
hotel.
album was primarily recorded in Denmark at Sweet Science with this very young, relatively unknown engineer working alongside Roger Glover called Flemming Rasmussen, who went on, of course, to win
Hmm.
Grammys with Metallica. I
Right.
know the vocals were done in New York. Did you spend any time in Denmark with Flemming?
Of course. Fleming was amazing. Young and just on the ball. I mean, I think Fleming did most of it all. I mean, he was just amazing. I mean, of course, Roger was so-called producing, of course, but Fleming was amazing at the board and the controls and the sounds and things like that, and you could see then that he was going to be somebody and an amazing guy personally as well. So real professional even back then. So yeah, I spent all the time there. I mean, I was there for the whole thing. I did a lot of vocals there, and uh, I mean, I don't know how. I think we did a few vocals in New York in Syosset Sound, but a lot of vocals I did there actually, or redid, or what have you, And we lived there actually for quite a while.
The album, when it was released, was a real surprise for many. It was polished. It was a very modern sound, which fitted the time perfectly, and especially for the U.S. market. Now, how keen
Hmm.
was Ritchie that the band should break the U.S. market?
Well, that was, I think, his whole agenda. He wanted to try to get into the charts there. He wasn't really big, as you say, in the States. So he wanted to crash the U.S. market and to crack it open and make Rainbow an entity. And I used to get accused of being commercial, but that was my job. My job was to write catchy hooks and and lyrics, to stay away from all the demons and dragons and things like that. I mean, we wrote spiritual things, angels and devils, but we never went into the gothic metal-y type stuff. It was always pretty much street level, sex, drugs, rock and roll. What was happening then on MTV and so on and so forth. So, as I said, that was the agenda. He was extremely keen on doing that.
They had as well, along with the biggest hit album in various markets, including the UK, where it made
Right.
number 3. What were your memories of the time when you look back at all the press coverage you were getting, the TV you were beginning to do? Singles were still a big thing then, as they drove album sales as well to a wider market. And I Surrender, the first track, was huge all
Correct.
over the world.
Yeah, it was overwhelming. And it was happening so fast that personally I didn't have time to really realize it, in a sense, because we were constantly working. And we were thrilled that we had a number 3 and this and that, and it was in the top of the charts all over the world. I mean, this was the goal, and I'd be lying if I said we weren't thrilled about it. But we concentrated more on the work. Even on the next album, I remember when we had success with this album, we said, now what are we going to do? I mean, we have to follow this up now, and it has to be strong. And we were concentrating on live, making sure that live band was really kicking ass, and it was. We had a great band, with all the members.
I was going to say, you did Can't Happen Here, which was a European single. When you look back at the lyrics now, I mean, it could have been written as an anthem for today, Cars by the Million on a One-Way Ride. Who was it that actually came up with those lyrics?
It never gets old, that song, because this is the state of the world, up and down and all around. It still remains the same. Roger wanted to do a piece on, I called Roger the philosopher, and we got along great because we shared a lot of the same, how would you say, mindset. And he just had this brilliant outlook and way of putting things. And then we kind of polished it up a bit so it bounced in the track. And it was a blinder because we used to do it exceedingly fast as well. So it was hard vocally to articulate all the words. But again, the message is still very strong and still apropos today. In fact, it probably even more so.
What did you think about suddenly finding that you have 2 instrumental tracks on that album, which is very rare for the time, but both never really felt out of place? We get Maybe Next Time, and then we have 2 more of your compositions, Freedom Fighter and Midtown Tunnel Vision, before that gloriously bombastic, over-the-top conclusion with Difficult to Cure, or Beethoven's Ninth.
Brilliant. I thought it was just part of Ritchie's brilliance, really, because he Maybe Next Time is epic, in my opinion. The instrumentals he's done have always greatly impressed me, and I think everyone, really, because it's spot on. Every time he comes up with an instrumental, it's whether it was the remake of Snowman later on and so on and so forth, or Weisheim or any of that. And then to do the Beethoven, and then to put an orchestra behind it in Japan. That was done way before the trend. I do a lot of that kind of those shows now. Well, I couldn't say this year, but orchestrated shows where I'm singing in front of an orchestra, sometimes with a band, sometimes without a band, and you can hear the string parts, doing the guitar parts, and so on and so forth. Amazing. And that was way before it was a trend. Now it seems to be a huge trend with
that was probably the best ever version of that track, Japan 84, with the Philharmonic Orchestra. Now, when you stood on stage, you introduce the track, you hand the spotlight over to Ritchie. When you turn and you walk off the stage, you stand and you watch. How did you feel the moment that orchestra appears from the darkness at the back of the stage and we're taken on this surreal instrumental adventure with what looks like one man, Ritchie Blackmore, taking on an entire orchestra.
Extremely excited. I'm a fan, I'm still a fan. And there were times on the side of the stage. At the same time, I actually was playing root notes, shall I say, on the guitar until a funny story. Um, During Beethoven, I was playing the root notes sort of like with the bass. And they mistakenly, I forget what country it was, Sweden or wherever. Anyway, there was a picture of me on guitar throwing shapes, of course, and during Beethoven. And that was, and then uh, Richie came down and he said, "Well, we got some good news and bad news." And I said, "Well, what's the bad news?" He goes, "You're off the guitar." And I went, "Yeah, I figured that once I saw the papers this morning because it was at breakfast when he said it." And we both laughed, but at the same time, it got confusing. But it's over. It's unbelievable when you hear the orchestra playing all those parts, and even today, if I might add, when we're playing Spotlight Kid with the orchestra, and you're hearing little 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 with the strings and everything, and it's amazing, just amazing. I mean, Ritchie wrote very classically anyway, so at the root of it all, with blues and classical.
Where does the album stand for you in your body of work with Rainbow? I mean, it was a remarkably creative period because, these days you get a band does an album, if you're lucky, and it's once every 3 and 4 years. You did 3 in 3 years.
Yeah, yeah, we worked a lot. We really did, and we were writing even on the road sometimes, bits and pieces as we called them. And then when we would get into the studio, we'd break these out on our cassettes. Back then, you had cassettes, and we were recording in hotel rooms and things like that. So it was such a creative time. The work ethic was was all that mattered to us. We really were workaholics. In fact, we worked so much, including live, that we didn't have much time to do videos. And MTV was exploding, and nobody had any idea what to do anyway. It's not like today, but as witnessed by me walking around in a bunch of mirrors with Stone Cold, but funny stuff. But we really a lot of times didn't show up for our own videos because we were on tour or in the studio or something. It just couldn't be. I hate to use the word couldn't be bothered, but the music was more important to us than anything. And sometimes they would just take some footage and then sort of edit it in. Hypnosis out of London was doing a lot of it, and we'd never even see it until it was on MTV or something. So
How did you feel going into the Bent Out of Shape album? I mean, you'd had Straight Between the Eyes getting a successful album, successful tour. I always felt that this album never really got maybe the credit that it deserved because vocally you put in 2 or 3 of your best performances with the band. Can't Let You Go was frankly epic. Street of Dreams and Desperate Heart.
yeah. Well, I have to agree with you as far as it being unnoticed or what have you, whatever they call it, um, because I think the album it was slick and it was more produced and it was more commercial in many, except that you did have fire dance and tracks like that to balance it out. There were heavy tracks in there. There were real deep rainbow tracks in there. So I never understood it, and you can't understand it because I think times change, and then all of a sudden, maybe people thought we were going over the edge or what have you. But we cracked the American market with Street of Dreams, and it was a huge MTV favorite, and radio still plays it. So I mean, I think it made its mark. And as far as I remember, Richie said it was like his favorite song.
At that time, you've completed tours all over the world. You've had 3 great albums. were there any signs that this was then going to be coming to an end? Were you surprised when Deep Purple re-emerged and Ritchie basically closed the band for, well, a dozen years or so?
Not at all, because I was, say, privy to everything that was pretty much happening on the inside. And I think that's what some people just don't understand is, like, it's not, oh no, poor Joe. I was involved in this. I knew they were in talks with I think it was BMG at the time for Purple to come back, and it was large sums of money thrown around, and kind of hard to not eat that carrot. Plus, it was probably a good idea anyway. And I was on to a solo career, with Elektra Records and so on and so forth. So all things looked good in my world anyway. But no, I knew all about it. In fact, I remember before that, Ritchie and I one night finishing a bottle of scotch in the hotel room. He looked at me and he said, we're not going to be for long. And I said, I know. And he looked at me, kind of raised his eyebrows and just said, how do you know? I said, because you're afraid of intimacy. And he said, you're right. And I knew we were getting closer. We were, when you get so close to somebody, it's almost, there's a fear there, especially with a guy like him. And I accepted all that because I knew exactly what was happening. And then when they started,
but from our perspective as fans, I suppose, growing up, looking at this relationship from outside, not the inside, your relationship with Ritchie looked to be a really very positive and very productive one. And in the years that have gone by, you've worked together again. You did Deep Purple with Slaves and Masters. You worked on Blackmore's Night as well. So there's always been a bit of mutual respect there.
I think so, especially when you witnessed the comment that he made about the Rock and Roll Hall of Shame, which is what I call it. He made that comment, I'll paraphrase it, that he said that I should have gotten an award for my work on Slaves and Masters. And he showed me a great amount of respect for that. And he also had said that was one of his favorite albums, which to this day I think still stands the test of time. Another underrated album because of timing and fandom and all that other stuff that happens in life. But we worked great together, and we made some great music, and I'm very proud of that. It's a legacy.
That Slaves and Masters album, a divided opinion. But if you listen to it now, 30 plus years later, it still sounds fresh. The songs still sound good. It's not something that you can say of things like The Battle Rages On or House of Blue Light. It is aged much, much more gracefully than a selection of their return albums.
It's because it's quality. Honestly, there's integrity and quality in that album. We made sure the songs and the tracks were strong, the lyrics were strong, and the performances were even stronger. And we really felt that this album, I mean, let me stop and say this. Deep Purple has had so many different people come through the doors, that it, always surprised me as to see, well, here I come through the doors and it's this big deal to people. Well, it's not just the Ritchie and Joe show or Deep Rainbow, as we were getting called. You listen to the music, and I think it's one of the last great Purple albums, because it's pound for pound, song for song. It's Deep Purple. It really is. It's based in what Deep Purple was all about, from the beginning, which is like a hard rock, bluesy, metallic sound. And
there isn't actually a weak song on that album. I have to say, I mean, you run down the tracks: King of Dreams, The Cut Runs Deep, Fire in the Basement, Truth Hurts, Breakfast in Bed, which was one of the best, Love Conquers All, Fortune Teller, Too Much Is Not Enough, Wicked Ways. There isn't a duff song on that album.
I mean, honestly, I don't think so. And I think as time went on, as you said now, if you listen to it now, and many people have, and many people now rethink it and really enjoy it because there's no bias or prejudice anymore. And sometimes the times that we live in create that. But when you just sit back and relax and say, "Here's another Deep Purple album," you can start to say, "Yeah, this thing is kicking. It's great," and it really is. And I love what Ian Pace actually said. I think in Firework magazine, that I was kind of the glue that held Purple together at that point. That made it possible for them to do the next record because Ritchie would have bailed out by then if I hadn't been there. And I mean, Pacey said it much more than better than I can. But if you read that article, that little piece that he said about it, it's never so true. And I feel totally honored that I was holding it together until they could actually do another album um, together with John. And this was I was very honored to be in that configuration of Deep Purple. I have to tell you.
So Rainbow were done or on hiatus, and a solo career beckoned, which kicked off with Rescue You. You then team up with Ingrid Malmsteen a couple of years later for that very, very good Odyssey album. When you look back now, certainly to that first solo album, did you think that got the recognition it should have? Again, when you do listen back to it now, which I did the other day, it is certainly a more vibrant, commercial sounding album, maybe, than Rainbow, but it seemed to fit the times well.
If I may, with that one, there was record company problems, shall we say. A lot of people are not aware of what goes on inside the record companies and behind closed doors. But for the second album, I was being saddled with a producer who wanted to change all of the songs I had written for that record. And I really just told him to go to hell and said, "I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to compromise this. These are great songs, and I don't need, to be told what to do at this point. I mean, I want you to produce me, but I don't want you to change the diamond to a ruby," which is what he was trying to do. It's a diamond. Leave it alone. Let's polish the diamond, not change the stone, if I can use an analogy. And other dodgy, shall we say, deals that were going on up there. And I nearly threw my A&R guy off the balcony of the Ritz. Honest to God, this is the truth. After about a half a quart of vodka and whatever, and some of the other bands that were present at this particular party, we were all up in the balcony VIP section. They had to pull me off them because I was going to drop them. I really was, because I had just had it. So that's why the second album never came out. When you have someone's girlfriend telling you how to do something, and you turn around and say, "Excuse me, could you just go back to the kitchen or bedroom where you belong?" Well, anyway, that guy is now washing cars, to be honest with you. But at one point, he was a record executive, and I have that on good knowledge. I mean, it's been years now, but that's exactly what was going on. I wasn't going to take any of their bullshit. And so that was the story with Rescue You and the follow up, because I was slated to be this, I wouldn't say Bon Jovi, but at least some kind of a MTV heartthrob, which I didn't really care too much about. I didn't want to do that. I was writing real music at the time, still do. That doesn't interest me at all. But then I started to flail around a bit, and Polygram asked me to do what I did for Rainbow to Malmsteen, which was, can you make him more accessible? He doesn't have songs. He's a great player. Alcatraz was one thing, but he's just floundering with these instrumentals and these other singers and him writing the lyrics and all this. And so that, again, was the plan, to write the Heaven Tonight, Dreaming, Hold On, what all of these great songs that were on that record. Odyssey was I think,
You had a great band, by the way,
yeah.
involved with all of this. You had people like Bob
Yep.
Daisley was on there. Jeff Glixman was doing the
Uh-huh.
engineering and production.
Well, originally we were supposed to have Eric Singer was supposed to be playing drums, and we met with Eric out in Los Angeles and the whole thing. And Bob, of course, was there for a few tracks. Then Ingve decided to take full control, start playing bass on some of the other ones. Jens Johansson was always supposed to be on the keyboards, but that was the plan, to surround Ingve with great support, great songs, and let him shine. But he was still pretty young, and he just he got. I believe fear is a great denier sometimes in people's lives, but we came out with a great album
Yeah, yeah.
nonetheless. I mean, the band was still very strong, But that's, oh yeah, great album.
Still a good album now, by the way. Again, it's another one that's traveled well through time.
Yeah, I mean, for me, you put that album on, it still sounds great. The songs are strong, and he's still, I mean, I still put Rising Force and songs like that in my set, Deja Vu. So I think the writing with that was great. I mean, even though we had that terrible accident, he had a very bad accident then, and that was another long story. But I thought he played great on the album, and again, one of our best works together and separately.
Let's talk a bit about what the future holds. Now, you've just finished a collaboration with Michael Schenker on his brand new MSG album, Immortal. Great album it was as well. I spoke to him a couple of weeks ago. He was thrilled with your contribution. You two have known each other for ages. How did the project go for you?
Well, it was great to finally get together with Michael. We've known each other forever, and always wanted to work together, and our schedules never permitted. So Michael Voss, who I write songs with and for different bands and things like that, just rang me up and said, "Can you do these 2 tracks?" And I said, "Well, throw them at me." And then I started to add some writing value to it, and so on and so forth, and we came up with these 2. So I'm very proud of them. I think they came out great. When I listen to the album as a whole, I think these 2 tracks stand out. So that was fun. And Michael's a great guy. I love him, and killer guitar player. So, but for me, I'm in the middle of, actually, I'm towards the tail end of finishing a new album, a new project with Peter Takrin from Pain, Hypocrisy. And it's a darker album, a heavier album. And the lyrics and the messages are very much apropos for the time of what's happening. After all, I wrote a lot of this during the COVID, and what's happening today as far as this, shall I say, global takeover. And I am expressing it all in these songs because this is something really important for everyone, and we're going through biblical times, literally biblical. So I'm trying to do my part by sort of giving everyone a shove, and maybe if you listen to the very strong music and messages, it would help.
And lastly, the rainbow situation. We got to mention this. It was a bit disappointing that when it all came back together. I mean, the idea that you put forward to get all of the surviving members, and people thinking, that's a great idea. One, because still people are still at pretty much the top of their game.
No.
And then it never happened. And it was a bit of an anticlimax. Is that now completely and utterly dead in the water? Or is there some little chink of light somewhere which could possibly see you get back together with the band?
I mean, I'm chuckling because I remember everything that happens, and I still have emails to prove it. I have them all in a file. And I remember the flack that I was getting about, well, Ritchie's never going to rock again, and Joe's not going to be there, and all this kind of stuff. And then, apparently he kind of turned his back and said, "Oh, well, Turner's not going to be involved in this," and he blah, blah, blah. And which I knew anyway. Again, I knew everything that was happening at the time. I'm going to delay the answer to your point, because I think it's important to stress the fact that what I wanted to do was authentic. It concerned an authenticity. I wanted to get everybody back together at some point and put this thing out as an extravaganza of Rainbow. There are so many fans that have never seen this band, whether it was, I mean, Doogie, me, Bonnet, various members that came through. I was in contact with Don Airy, with Roger Glover, Rondinelli, Dave Rosenthal, Chuck Berge, Graham, everybody. I was in contact with everybody, and I threw it at them before I opened my mouth to Ritchie, or Ritchie's camp, let's say. And I just said, do I have any interest if I can put this together? And they were like, well, ho hum, well, yeah, if you can. If this happens, let me know, call me back, that kind of thing. So at least I had a go ahead. And I had other deals set up with possibly at least a 4-song EP with Universal. And I had Rock Fuel Media wanting to do a 3D 2-hour video film of this. They did the Guns N' Roses and AC/DC and all these other things. They've got a very good friend there who owns the company, and he was ready for it. And then the management just collapsed the whole thing. Honestly, collapsed it all. And we just looked at each other, all of my people involved, and just said, oh my God, he's missing the biggest chance he's ever had. This would be incredible to headline. Oh, I also had Live Nation online. Okay. Saying that they would give us either headlining spots to all the festivals, or at least co-headlining or something like that, special guests and things like that to all the biggest festivals. So it was all set up, and it collapsed. So could it ever happen again? Well, I don't know. It's like sort of your ex-wife, you get divorced. I think Gillan said it best at one point when he was asked. He said, getting back with Ritchie again, he said something like, "It's like getting back with your ex-wife." He said, "No, I don't think that's going to happen. It's not going to be good for either of us." I don't have any problems. I don't have any hate or jealousy, or I have a lot of disappointment in the fact that they didn't do well. They came back with sort of a half-ass version of Rainbow, and it was the songs were really what's carried it, in my opinion. When you heard the songs, the fans really knew every word, whether it was a Dio song, one of mine, one of Graham's, whatever. They knew it and sang along with it, but it wasn't. There was no fire in the band. There was. Do
you think Ritchie just didn't particularly want the significant pressure to live up to everything that had gone before, with all of those headline slots, the cameras on you full time? Do you think that had something to do with it?
Yeah, I do. Look, this is his prerogative, and with all respect, I say this. Yeah, probably. That's probably a genuine, fair, and reasonable explanation. That he really didn't want to go through all that, and he just wanted to sort of cruise by and take it easy, so to speak, as opposed to like write some songs actually. Because I mean, there's no new songs by Rainbow. I mean, there's one song you can't even really call it. What is that? Waiting for a sign or whatever. What the hell is that? I mean, come on, that's not Rainbow. And then the remake of I Surrender. Come on, give me a break with a drum machine. I mean, come on. Well, what are they thinking about? I mean, this is when I said disappointment, I meant the legacy of Rainbow. The legacy itself deserved better treatment. That's all. It really did, and so did.
We've never seen any. I thought we might have seen some special. I mean, everybody's doing them, special edition versions with I don't know, various other outtakes or studio or anything. But there's never really been any work done on the back catalogue.
Yeah. Well, that's insightful, isn't it? I mean, like your first question would be why?
Well, you would, because it's a money-making opportunity for one. I mean, I mean, Christ, you've only got to look at David Coverdale. I mean, Coverdale does one every week.
Yeah, right. God love him. You're right, though. I mean, why not remaster everything and pull out some of the older tapes and this, that, the other thing? I mean, there were a couple of tracks that we never even put out that I'm sure if they played nice with Roger Glover that he could find. But you're right. I don't know. I guess that there was just when you lose interest. Well, I guess Ritchie just lost interest in the fact of doing anything further creatively. And I mean, the word on the street is that Candace found the singer, and I don't know what the problem is there, but I do know that it's about the legacy. I was trying to preserve a legacy, do my best to do that, and be a part of all that, and it just fell through for I don't know what they didn't understand about it, but probably what you inferred there was that it was just too much, maybe for
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
over the top, and he didn't want to go through that for fear of failure or something. I don't know, whatever it is.